Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie After We Collided, released in 2020, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. She steps into the cafe as though walking into the eye of a brewing storm, the jingle of the door's bell heralding tension and possibility. Steam curls from her coffee mug into the chill morning air, her fingers curled tight around its warmth. Across the room, he waits, leaning against the counter with a sort of casual ease that masks undercurrents of restlessness. Their eyes lock, two magnets drawn together by forces neither fully understands. In that suspended moment, every color in the room deepens, amber light pooling on dark wood tables, the soft pastel of her scarf, the fading bruise of yesterday's bruises on his heart. And so begins the next chapter, where love's fierce pressure tests the boundaries of trust and pain. They met amidst the shared chaos of first-year college life, each chasing dreams yet finding each other in the spaces between lectures and late-night study sessions. Their early days shimmered with discovery. Stolen kisses beneath streetlights, whispered confessions in the hush of empty libraries, laughter spilling into dawn atop the campus hill. But love, in its unguarded joy, sometimes invites shadows. Walls built from past wounds began to crack when his secrets surfaced like submerged reefs, threatening to shipwreck their fragile happiness. She, driven by fierce devotion and stubborn hope, refused to drift away. He, haunted by mistakes and unable to fully let go, pulled back in sudden storms of silence. In this sequel, those fault lines widen. She returns home after a night of trembling apologies, only to find him gone. No note, only the echo of unanswered calls. Her heart ricochets between relief at escape from his self-inflicted turmoil and dread that he might never come back. She hunts for him in every familiar haunt, the graffiti-smeared stairwell where they first kissed, the neon-lit diner where they shared pancakes at 3 a.m., the quiet park bench that held their promises. Each step carries the weight of "I love you" and "Why did you leave?" Their world, once wrapped in the soft glow of mutual need, fractures into two dark halves. He, meanwhile, confronts his own demons in solitude. The empty apartment, stripped of her presence, feels like a mausoleum of regret. He paces past photographs of laughter now frozen in time, each snapshot a dagger to his conscience. He recalls the frantic text she sent after his outburst, her voice cracking through the screen, "I just want to help you." The simplest plea tears at him. He who built walls to keep pain out now finds himself locked inside. The memories of her bright eyes and steady hand haunt his sleepless nights. And in that haunting, he glimpses the hope that he can rebuild, if only he has the courage to face the truth. Her search draws her into his world, layer by layer. She traces bank transactions to a lakeside motel where he used to sketch dreams in charcoal on hotel stationery. She finds his belongings, rumpled sketches of impossibly hopeful horizons, a tattered guitar case missing its strings, a single unopened letter addressed in his slanted handwriting. Each discovery flares her heart with anger, sorrow, and longing. When she finally bursts into that musty room, he stands by the window, eyes fixed on the dark water. His reflection trembles in the glass, a ghost of love's regret. She crosses the room in measured steps, her own reflection joining his, a silent testimony to the distance they've fallen and the perilous journey to return. Their reunion crackles with electric tension. Words unsaid pulse between them, heavy with memory. She demands to know why he fled. He struggles to disentangle fear from love. When he finally whispers the truth, how guilt strangled his hope, how he feared dragging her into the wreckage, her chest floods with both fury and compassion. She wants to beat him for the pain he's caused, then cradles him as though he might shatter. In that embrace, they discover that love's reckoning requires not only forgiveness but the courage to face the darkness together. As the narrative unfolds, new challenges arise. His ex-lover returns, her presence a mirror to every moment he pushed her away, and she must wrestle with jealousy and insecurity. Meanwhile, his work obligations spiral, tempting him to retreat into numbing routines rather than confront his past. She, determined to rescue their future, confronts her own fears of unworthiness, recalling childhood wounds that taught her love always ends in loss. Each hurdle forces them to ask, can love survive when every layer of self is peeled back? The cinematography mirrors their inner turbulence. Night scenes detach to slow, lingering shots of rain slashing against fogged windows, each droplet a cipher of sorrow. Daylight arrives in sudden bursts, the sun's glare through half-open blinds, the startled birdsong in early morning trees. Handheld cameras capture the quivering intimacy of close quarters, two bodies pressed in kitchen-light warmth, breaths mingling as they carve dinner. Wide angles frame them against solitude, him on a deserted pier, her in an empty parking lot, underscoring the gulf they must cross. Sound becomes their emotional vocabulary. A pulse of low piano undergirds their moments of rupture, each note echoing unspoken regret. During arguments, the ambient world fades into the hush of a tense heartbeat, punctuated by the rasp of his breath. When they reconnect, a soaring guitar riff sweeps in, as though the universe itself rejoices. In the film's most pivotal scene, a midnight picnic on a rooftop overlooking the city skyline, her laughter blends with their song, a fragile melody that defies gravity. The city's distant hum, the whistle of wind at the building's edge, and the soft strum of his fingertips on an old guitar weave together, forging a moment that transcends their pain. Editing stitches these moments into a seamless tapestry of hope and heartache. Cross-cutting between his solitary confessions and her determined search creates a pulse of urgency. Montage sequences flash through their happier times, late-night drives on winding roads, dancing in empty rooms, juxtaposed with the stark reality of their rifts. The pace accelerates as truths come crashing through lies, then slows to a breathless halt as they stand face to face, tears unspooling like film reels of memory. Behind the scenes, the cast found echoes of their characters' turmoil in their own experiences. The lead actress, reflecting on her scenes of longing and regret, shared how she once fled a relationship in fear, only to realize later that escape can break the heart more than staying to fight. The actor, whose on-screen pain felt raw, revealed that he channeled real loss from his past, writing letters of apology to a friend he'd pushed away. Their vulnerability on set lent authenticity to every confession and embrace. As the third act unfolds, the film teases the possibility of a fractured truce. She contemplates leaving again, this time to reclaim her own grounded life, while he crafts a plan to make amends, an elaborate evening of reconnection, from handwritten letters leading across the city to a final destination where their love first bloomed. In the film's climax, the camera circles them in a gentle arc, capturing every flicker of relief and hope. The city lights below mirror her tears, shimmering like distant promises. He takes her hand, and together they step toward a new dawn, uncertain, imperfect, yet alive with possibility. The final shot holds on their silhouettes against the rising sun, a silent testament to love's power to heal and the strength found when two wounded souls choose to rebuild rather than retreat. And so this story ends not with conclusions but with beginnings, the first tentative steps toward a love tested by fault lines yet strengthened by truth. In this tale of broken trust and second chances, we witness that the fiercest storms can clear skies for a love that demands both bravery and grace. Stay tuned for more chapters yet unwritten, because when the heart dares to collide again, every ending is the seed of a new beginning. She traces the rim of her coffee cup with a trembling finger, staring out the cafe window at the gray drizzle that blurs the world beyond. Each drop on the glass echoes the tremor in her heart, uncertainty, longing, fear. Just hours earlier, she had arrived in Seattle with nothing but her freshly inked dreams of an internship at Vance Publishing and the hope that this new chapter might rewrite the pages of her past. The city's pulse, clanging streetcars, the low roar of the sound, neon signs flickering through the rain, felt alive beneath her skin. Yet as she waits, she wonders if her heart can survive one more collision. She first saw him under fluorescent office lights, the hum of printers and the rustle of paper filling the air like static. She'd stepped into the editorial bullpen bright-eyed, her notes clutched in a neat leather folder, ready to prove she belonged. Then he emerged from behind a cubicle wall, tall, dangerously handsome, with eyes that smoldered like embers. Hardin Scott, the assistant editor whose reputation preceded him, offered a single nod that crackled with challenge. She swallowed, veins humming adrenaline, and whispered, "Hi, I'm Tessa." His lips curved into a half-smile, amused and wary, as though daring her to slip on his sharp edges. Their first collaboration, fact-checking a celebrity exposé, fell apart in heated revisions. He tore through her careful notes, dismissing her meticulous research with a flick of his pen. She stood her ground, reciting sources as if casting spells, until he paused, his gaze flicking from her defiance to something raw, unguarded. In that heartbeat, she glimpsed a flicker beyond his brash facade, a wounded soul hiding behind indignation. They parted with strained courtesy, but neither would forget the charge in that collision. Outside the office, the city's neon glow beckoned like a promise of distraction. She wandered into a rain-slicked street lined with coffee stands and food trucks, her heart still echoing his curt dismissal. Then, half-hidden beneath a neon open sign, she spotted him, alone and brooding at a paper-strewn table, an empty espresso cup at his elbow. The tension between them pulsed like static. She approached, heart pounding, and offered to buy him another coffee, a truce on fragile terms. He studied her, tension coiled in his jaw, then accepted with a single nod. Over shared lattes and cracked laughter, they discovered common ground. His love of classic rock, her addiction to late-night poetry, and a hunger to escape past ghosts. Their friendship bloomed in the flicker of office after dark. When the editorial team erupted in chaos over last-minute deadline changes, he found her huddled in the supply room, overwhelmed. Wordlessly, he slid a cup of coffee into her hands and sat beside her in the dull hum of fluorescent light. No words were exchanged. None were needed. In that quiet, she realized that beneath his sarcasm lay a protector who bristled at injustice, a man desperate to armor her against cruelty. And in her gentle gratitude, he found something rare, the warmth of being understood. But warmth, like rain against glass, can blur the hardest lines. One evening, at a rooftop gathering for interns, she leaned into the night air, laughing as he recited lyrics to an old love ballad. The city lights glimmered below them like distant fireflies. Her hand brushed his, both stilled, electric. He caught her gaze, chest tightening, before leaning in for a kiss that tasted of whiskey and longing. Their lips met, a single spark igniting a fierce flame. The world narrowed to that rooftop, to the rain-slicked tiles beneath their feet, to the breathless hush that followed their crash into each other. Morning light revealed the jagged outlines of their mistake. She stilled at her desk, heart hammering, memories of his touch still scorching her skin. He lingered at her cubicle, eyes dark as storm clouds, guilt and desire warring beneath the surface. They pretended business as usual, but every glance and every brush of paper was a reminder of the chasm between them, professional boundaries on one side, raw need on the other. They danced around their secret, each moment a risk that could shatter their tenuous balance. Her first weekend in the city should have been an escape, a chance to explore the Pike Place market, to lose herself in sea salt breezes off the pier. Instead, she found herself in his apartment, drawn by a text that crackled with urgent vulnerability. "I need to talk." Inside his loft, light slanted through steel-framed windows, illuminating the bruises on his forearm, evidence of nightmares he'd tried to outrun. She sat beside him on the narrow couch, voice trembling, as he confessed his past, a fractured home, a father's abandonment, a mother's despair that left him haunted. Each word shredded the last of her fear, weaving empathy in its place. When he wept, she held him, her own tears mingling with his, two broken hearts seeking solace in collision. Their nights became charged with unspoken promises. He taught her to play guitar, his calloused fingers guiding hers across frets, and she watched him transform from wariness to wonder. She introduced him to homemade cinnamon rolls, the kitchen's warmth stitching laughter through the morning haze. They shared playlists loaded with songs that mapped their raw emotions, hope, regret, desire, for each other. But every moment of peace carried a shadow, the fear that his darkness might swallow her light. His mistrust, born of betrayal, emerged in sudden storms. She would find him gone at dawn, apartment empty, no note but a shattered coffee mug on the counter. Panic flared in her chest. Had she misread the warmth in his eyes? Each disappearance carved a new fissure in her faith. She stalked the rain-slicked streets to the only place he might seek solace, the rooftop where they first kissed. There, beneath the tremor of city lights, she confronted him with tears and furious relief. He pressed her to his chest, whispers of apology catching in his throat. He wanted to protect her by pushing her away, he said, but in that embrace she realized that love demanded risk. Back at work, rumors of their closeness rippled through the office like electricity. She found her mentor, the steady-hearted Christine, watching her from across the bullpen with an unreadable expression. They shared a lingering glance, understanding that they were navigating forbidden territory. Deadlines loomed, executives prowled, and every stolen glance between them took on the hush of secret passageways. Her drive to excel fractured with nights spent editing his tear-stained manuscript instead of her own drafts, and his focus shattered when her name flickered on his phone screen. The collision of careers and hearts threatened to derail both. At a late-night staff event in a downtown speakeasy, they danced too close, the dim light highlighting the tremor in his hands and the unspoken apology in her eyes. Clink of glasses, the band's smoky notes, the heat of bodies milling around them, all faded when he brushed her hair behind her ear and kissed her in a heartbeat of fierce clarity. Yet as the music soared, he pulled away, guilt shadowing his face. She clung to the moment, determined to turn his darkness into shared light. But he stood at the bar, distance yawning between them, and she realized that love's fiercest test lay ahead. Their tipping point came on a rain-lashed evening when she uncovered a secret he'd hidden, a message to an unknown mistress, words of regret that cut like knives. Storm clouds mirrored her fury as she confronted him in the gloom of his apartment lobby. His face, shrouded in neon reflections, pleaded innocence. Her heart, bruised by new betrayal, recoiled. In that charged silence, rain hammering on metal canopies, distant sirens wailing, their fragile world shattered. She fled into the downpour, tears mixing with raindrops, each step pounding with shattered faith. Safe in the hush of her own apartment, she stared at her reflection, eyes red, heart raw, wondering if love's gravity could pull them back together or send them spiraling irretrievably apart. In her inbox lay his email, subject line, "I'm sorry." She hesitated, fingers trembling over the keyboard. Outside, thunder rumbled, a final pulse before the storm's eye. In that breathless pause, she understood that their story, brimming with collision and crescendo, had reached a crossroads. Would she open that message and step into the pain of reconciliation, or would she close the door on a love that burned brighter than lightning, even as it threatened to consume them both? She stalked through the rain-lashed streets of Seattle, collar turned up against the drizzle, his apology email burning in her pocket like a confession she wasn't sure she was ready to open. Each neon-lit puddle she passed reflected her own conflicted image. Tessa Young, the girl who came to the city to chase dreams, now torn between trust and betrayal. She ducked under the awning of her apartment building, heart pounding, and slit open her phone to read his words, "I'm sorry for the lies. I never meant to hurt you. Please let me explain." Her thumb trembled over the reply field, but she pressed delete instead, severing the lifeline he'd thrown. Meanwhile, inside his dimly lit loft, Hardin Scott stared at his own confession stuck in his drafts, unopened email site of his worst fear, that she wouldn't give him the chance to explain. He pressed his forehead to the cool glass of the high-rise window, the city lights swirling like stars below. Her absence, her silhouette no longer lighting up his texts, echoed louder than any silence. In that hollow grip of regret, he knew that penance alone wouldn't win back her trust. He needed to show up in person, let his actions speak when words had failed. She awoke the next morning to the relentless beep of job alerts, internship applications, freelance edits, reminders of the life she'd carved for herself before he stormed in. She threw on jeans and a wool sweater and headed into the office, determined to lose herself in deadlines rather than drown in heartache. Her colleagues greeted her with sympathetic glances. Rumors of their breakup had rippled through the bullpen. Christine approached her desk with quiet concern, offering a cup of tea and a gentle reminder, "Work can't fix everything. You have to decide what you deserve." Tessa nodded, steeling herself. She would not be defined by his storms. Yet fate had other plans. A misdelivered package arrived at her cubicle, a battered leather journal she recognized as his, the one she'd never returned. Inside, his handwriting sprang from the pages. "My nightmares, my sketches, the lyric fragments from the night I first kissed you." Each entry bared his soul. Confessions of self-loathing, pleas for forgiveness, poems inspired by her laughter. She slipped behind her screen to read, tears blurring the ink. In his raw vulnerability she saw the man who had cradled her fears on that couch, whose trembling guitar chords had soothed her nights. The line between self-protection and self-sabotage snapped. In that moment, she realized that love, in its fiercest form, sometimes demands the courage to leap across chasms of pain. Armed with the journal, she stepped into the streets, her steps pulling her toward his loft. The sky had cleared, leaving the city slick with possibility. She rode the elevator to his floor, heart thrumming like a drum roll before confession. He opened the door before she could knock, surprise flickering in his deep brown eyes. His mouth opened, ready to speak, but she held up the journal, her voice firm. "You left this behind. I think you need it more than I do." His expression shattered in grief and gratitude. She stepped inside, and they stood face to face, two broken souls on the brink of either reunion or ruin. She let him speak first, his voice hoarse from unspoken apologies, not repeating his draft email but weaving a story of his own reckoning. He told her of the nightmares that haunted his nights, the lonely hours he'd spent trying to rewrite his past, the moment he realized that pushing her away only magnified his despair. He laid out a plan. Counseling sessions he'd already booked, a promise to meet her halfway in therapy, an unwavering commitment to honesty even when it hurt. He closed with a single request, "Let me prove that I can be someone worthy of your love." Tessa listened, tears tracing steady lines down her cheeks. In his gaze she saw no more walls but a bridge, one erected in pain but built to span the divide between them. She handed back his journal, the leather soft beneath her fingertips. "I'm scared," she admitted, "but I'm willing to try." Her words, fragile as spring's first bloom, carried the weight of forgiveness. He reached out, brushing a fingertip across her cheek, and the electricity that once sparked conflict now ignited hope. In the days that followed, they crafted a new rhythm. He joined her at Pike Place Market, where she tasted fresh berries beneath garlands of umbrellas. They walked the waterfront at dusk, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting on his chest as they listened to the tugboat's whistle. In the cafe where they'd first met, they sat side by side, laptops open but unattended, savoring the comfort of shared silence. Each moment of simple togetherness patched the wounds of their collision, reminding them that love's healing power often lies in the gentlest gestures. At work, rumors of their reunion swirled, but they faced them with quiet solidarity. She introduced him to Christine, her mentor, as someone who'd become essential to her growth. At work, rumors of their reunion swirled, but they faced them with quiet solidarity. She introduced him to Christine, her mentor, as someone who'd become essential to her growth. He offered her support in late-night editing sprints, proofing articles by the glow of desk lamps. And when the power grid once again faltered, an all-too-familiar echo of their early days, they found themselves huddled together in the break room, laughter once again bridging the dark hum of machinery. But their path to resolution was not without its final twist. During a late-night rap party at a Seattle pub, a former flame of his appeared, Roxanne, fierce and confident, wielding old memories like a weapon. She cornered them in a hush of stunned patrons, questioning Tessa's qualifications, claiming that she'd never truly understand the complexities of his soul. The words, barbed and sharp, cut through Tessa's newfound conviction. She faltered for an instant, doubt flickering in her eyes. He moved to shield her, stepping between them, his voice steady as rock. "She understands more than anyone." She's the one who stayed when I ran away. His defense of her silenced Roxanne, whose smirk vanished into the noise of clinking glasses. That night, as they walked home beneath a canopy of city lights, Tessa rested her hand on his arm. "I needed you to fight for me," she whispered. He nodded, voice soft. "I will always fight for you." In that vow lay the film's ultimate resolution: love's triumph over fear, trust rebuilt from wreckage, two hearts colliding not in destruction but in the fierce collision that shapes something sturdier, something that can weather storms yet to come. In the final scene, they stand on the rooftop where they first kissed, dawn's golden fingers prying apart twilight's shroud. He holds her in his arms as the sun climbs, and the city below stretches into promise. No longer two broken souls adrift, they face the horizon together, ready to write the next chapter. One of resilience, vulnerability, and the kind of love that emerges only when two hearts learn to forgive the past and leap into the light of possibility. She first stepped onto Seattle's rain-slick streets as someone reborn, notebooks clutched like talismans, heart pounding with fresh hope. Tessa Young carried the weight of small-town dreams and burdens of family expectations, her wide brown eyes brimming with both longing and trepidation. In college halls, she moved with a gentle deliberation, every step measured, every glance hesitant, an outsider navigating the tides of ambition and devotion. But beneath her careful composure lay a fierce curiosity, an inner flame that refused to be stamped out by disappointment. Her voice, steady though laced with vulnerability, echoed with the resonance of scars healed and wounds still tender. When she learned that love required more than whispered promises, she discovered a stubborn resilience, the courage to confront betrayal and the conviction to demand honesty. In her trajectory, we see the journey of a young woman who dared to trade certainty for the risk of authentic connection, whose gentle strength emerged not in spite of her fear, but through it. He, by contrast, was a force of nature, storm-cloud broad shoulders, eyes like smoldering embers. Harden Scott's abrupt entrances crackled with raw intensity, every movement colored by past torments he guarded like precious secrets. His laughter, when it surfaced, scorched the air with both irony and desperation. Born into a fractured family and warped by abandonment, he wore his defiance as armor, his walls built brick by painful brick. His hands, calloused from fights and frantic poetry scribbled on napkins, revealed a soul both restless and deeply poetic. In moments of solitude, he bared his vulnerability in journals filled with charcoal sketches and lyric fragments that bled anguish and yearning. He could lash out, wielding words as weapons, yet his bravest act was the rare admission of regret, a sliver of light in his own internal darkness. Through Harden's arc, we witness the perilous alchemy of love and trauma, the fragile dance between self-destruction and the daring leap toward redemption. Landon Gibson emerged as Tessa's steadfast harbor amid life's storm. With a smile that exuded warmth and a loyalty as constant as the North Star, he walked through her world like an old friend at sunrise, gentle, reliable, patient. His brown hair fell in boyish waves, his laughter a balm to frayed nerves. Landon's compassion shone brightest when he quietly offered support without demanding attention. A text left on her phone, a quiet listening ear when her heartbreak spilled into midnight calls. He pursued his own path, supporting roles on set and art exhibits in dingy galleries, yet his true gift was the capacity to love without expectation. In his unwavering kindness, he illuminated the film's truth, that some of the most profound love stories unfold not in grand gestures, but in the steady constancy of being there when it mattered most. Her roommate and college confidant, Steph Flynn, crackled with electric energy. Tall, auburn-haired, and unafraid of vulnerability, she moved through campuses like a whirlwind, her dreams of Broadway stardom fueling every step in her signature stilettos. She delivered pep talks in hallways and motivational rants in cramped apartments, her voice echoing with unshakable optimism. Yet beneath her dazzling exterior lurked doubts, fear of failure that she masked with bravado. In each spontaneous dance break at 2 a.m., she invited Tessa and others to taste the freedom that comes from shedding one's fears, if only for a moment. Steph's arc reminded all who watched that courage can be contagious, and that to embrace one's dreams fully often requires the daring to be delightfully vulnerable simply for the sake of joy. There was also Tristan Knight, whose brooding distances mirrored his own longing for identity beyond privilege. With sharp cheekbones and a measured calm, he floated through parties and boardrooms alike, never quite belonging anywhere. His voice, soft yet resonant, carried the weight of unspoken expectations, a father's footsteps trailing in marble hallways, his own need to carve a future unbound by his family's shadow. In stolen moments, sipping whiskey at a bar's edge, guitar slung low, he confided in Hardin, offering brittle trust in exchange for shared solace. Tristan's quiet loyalty and occasional pierced-heart poems traced on napkins illuminated the film's exploration of friendship forged in the spaces between love and loss, and the power of finding kinship in those who seem most distant. Together, these souls wove a tapestry of love's collisions and crescendos. Tessa's heart, once guarded by small-town caution, burst open under Seattle's neon glow. Hardin, shaped by wounds too sharp to name, found healing in her unyielding faith. Landon's gentle devotion offered a refuge, Steph's uninhibited spirit lit the dark corners, and Tristan's quiet solidarity reminded them all that no one truly walks alone. Each interaction, a text message of tender encouragement, a guitar chord strung between them in moonlit rooms, a shout of laughter at midnight, etched new facets into their stories. Through courage and confession, heartbreak and hope, they discovered that love's greatest metamorphosis unfolds not in perfect harmony but in the electrifying dissonance of two hearts daring to collide. They arrived in Atlanta on a humid March morning, bellies still heavy with the remnants of spring break and nerves crackling like static in the warm air. Production trucks, each emblazoned with the film's working title, After We Collided, rumbled into Pinewood Studios, Georgia, their sides reflecting the swaying palms that stood in for Seattle's gray cedars. Extras clustered near craft services, sipping sweet tea and swapping gossip. Did you hear they're shooting the park scene today? Rumor is, it's pouring rain on set. Little did they know, the weather gods would grant their wish, and more. From the outset, the weather in Atlanta proved a mischievous third character in the film's unfolding drama. The morning they shot Tessa and Hardin's first rooftop confession, storm clouds billowed overhead as if choreographed to heighten their emotional stakes. Rain began falling in fat droplets just as the cameras rolled, draping the scene in a sheen of cinematic sorrow. Director Roger Kumble, unflappable under his brimmed hat, shouted, "Keep going!" while stunt coordinator Steve Kramer rigged safety cables, ensuring that neither actor slipped off the water-slicked ledge. That unplanned downpour found its way into the final cut, a baptism of tears and rain that no amount of CGI could replicate. Inside the soundstage, Josephine Langford discovered an unexpected co-star, an ancient ventilation system that roared to life at the most inopportune moments. During the pivotal scene where Tessa confronts Hardin over his secret past, her whispers were repeatedly drowned out by a guttural hum that echoed through the plaster walls. Sound mixer Olivia Jenkins tossed acoustic blankets across the walls, microphones in hand, while Langford improvised by pressing her lips close to the boom mic, her breaths punctuating each line with raw intimacy. Post-production legend later noted that the line, "I just need the truth," gained extra weight from that forced proximity. Hero Fiennes Tiffin, cast as Hardin, brought his own set of surprises. His motorcycle arrived on set in pieces, custom-built for the film sequence where he speeds through rain-slicked streets. On the build day, the crew realized the fuel tank was backward. What should have been the filler nozzle pointed toward the handlebars. Far from derailing the schedule, the mechanical hiccup sparked a hot wiring lesson for the cast. Fiennes, in leather jacket and drenched hair, practiced motorcycle startups under the tutelage of a local stunt rider. During filming, his real ignition struggles lent authenticity to Hardin's trembling crisis of control, and the production kept every 10-second in the final montage. The chemistry between the leads sparked its own fireworks. During an intimate kitchen scene, Langford and Fiennes rehearsed lines while snacking on leftover pizza slices from craft services. When a pizza box slid off the counter during a take, flipping open to reveal half-eaten pepperoni, the actors collapsed into genuine laughter. Director Kumble, capturing the moment on 2 cameras, kept the outtake in a bonus reel dubbed "Pizza of Emotions." Fans later noted how the off-screen joy gave the on-screen tension a thrilling undercurrent. Filming Tessa's arrival at Vance Publishing offices demanded a precise choreography of extras and moving parts. The production built a sleek, modern office suite inside Stage 12, complete with glass partitions and potted succulents. On the first take, a wayward production assistant wearing a headset wandered into frame, peeking curiously through the glass at the actors. Rather than cut, Kumble called, "Keep rolling," and the assistant's blurred reflection became a playful Easter egg, a reminder that life, much like love, often intrudes unexpectedly. Wardrobe introduced its own set of challenges. Tessa's signature cardigans, soft mohair blends in muted pastels, were sweaters purchased on location from a small boutique in Buckhead. The owner, unaware of the film's teenage following, found her racks plundered for dozens of matching knits. By day 3, she was restocking shipments at dawn, her backroom piled high with new arrivals. Costume designer Erin Banach joked that she'd inadvertently launched the Atlanta cardigan trend, with local influencers decked in Tessa's colors and unknowingly doubling as impromptu extras. Beyond Atlanta, a key location shoot took the team to an abandoned train yard on the outskirts of the city. There, the crew rebuilt an old caboose platform to stage Hardin's midnight confession to Tessa. When the generator powering the set's battle lamps sputtered, the team switched to battery-powered LEDs stored in the prop department's closet. The resulting flicker, half candlelight, half emergency swirl, lent the scene a raw, stop-motion texture that editor Michael Trent described as the visual song of confession. It became one of the film's most critically praised sequences, proof that resourcefulness can spark profundity. Soundtrack scorer Lucas Vidal encountered a different conundrum. He wanted to underscore Hardin's tumult with a haunting cello motif, but his recordings at London's Air Studios were too pristine for the film's gritty tone. On a whim, Vidal tracked his cello through a subway tunnel in Madrid, using the echo and rumble of passing trains to roughen the timbre. When that rumble surfaced beneath the love theme, it added a subterranean growl, an oral symbol of Hardin's emotional undercurrents. Fans of the soundtrack trace the motif's genesis to that impromptu subway session, a testament to the unexpected paths creativity can take. Casting brought subtle delights. Dylan Sprouse, rumored to drop a cameo, surprised the set by sending over a custom Hardin's Brooding Spirit cake that arrived during a late lunch break. The pastry featured fondant curls and a single sculpted frown, accompanied by a note, "Keep the angst alive." The cake, devoured by cast and crew, became a standing gag. Crew chief Ebony Stewart built an unofficial Hardin Cake of the Day bracket, pitting fan-favorite pastry interpretations against each other, each with playful commentary. COVID-19 precautions, barely a whisper on the horizon in early 2019, emerged as a quiet undercurrent by the final weeks of filming. The production had just wrapped the climactic hospital scene when reports of a new virus reached their distribution manager, prompting the first of many sanitization protocols. Cast and crew began coordinating meal pickups instead of buffet lines, and Hero Fiennes voluntarily quarantined for 48 hours after a minor flu scare, deepening the on-screen intensity of his character's near breakdown. These early steps foreshadowed the industry-wide shifts to come, and the film became one of the last to complete principal photography under pre-pandemic normalcy. Visual effects artist Priya Nair faced her own surprises. For the sequence where Hardin's nightmares manifest in flickering CCTV footage, she needed stock surveillance shots of Seattle streets. With travel restrictions looming, she reached out to local film students in Vancouver, commissioning them to shoot 24/7 round-the-clock feeds of selected intersections. Those grainy clips, spliced with glitch overlays, conjured a sense of relentless pursuit that mirrored Hardin's own haunted mind. The students, credited in the final cut, later shared how seeing their footage in theaters felt like stepping into a collective dream. Reshoots in Vancouver brought unexpected wildlife encounters. During an outdoor reunion scene in a public park, the crew set up lights and reflectors at sunset, only to be approached by a flock of curious Canadian geese. The birds honked with imperious dignity, waddling through the camera tracks as if protesting their intrusion. After attempts to shoo them off failed, the director embraced the moment, capturing several takes with the geese in the background. The final cut features one goose honk echoing through a poignant dialogue beat, a moment that fans joke was Hardin's conscience quacking in. On wrapping day, the cast gathered for a final group photo on the steps of the Irish pub used for Tessa's first Seattle night out. The entire ensemble donned T-shirt replicas of Tessa's pastel cardigans, erupted into laughter, and shared toasts with local craft beer. Hero Fiennes, uncharacteristically sentimental, gave a speech about finding family on set and thanked every department from grips to catering. Crew members broke into applause, their phones flashing captures of that moment across social media. When the film premiered at the Regency Center in Los Angeles, a mysterious gift basket waited outside the screening room. A pizza with pink icing, an homage to Tessa's cardigans, and a note reading, "For the sweetest debut." Fans later traced the gesture to Aaron Bannock's key grip, still chuckling at the idea of a sugar-glazed pizza. The cake and pizza found their way into the DVD extras, packaged under gastronomic Easter eggs. In the months following release, conventions brimmed with panels on the film's quirkiest production tales, recounting the rogue geese of Vancouver, the rainstorm that became a baptism of truth, the ventilation system's cameo in confessional scenes, and the guerrilla soundtrack recording in a Madrid subway tunnel. Every story underscored a single truth. The strangest facts often cast the brightest light on a film's making, revealing the playful ingenuity and unexpected magic that transforms scripted scenes into living art. And as fans continue to discover these tales, shared on streaming platforms, whispered at midnight shows, and scrawled in burn books of devotion, they celebrate the hidden heartbeat of a film born in rainfall, surprise, and the relentless pursuit of emotional truth. They arrived at the premiere under a sky dusted with stars, the marquee's glow proclaiming a story born in heartbreak and rebirth. From that very first hush, the audience sensed they were about to witness more than a sequel to a best-selling romance. They were stepping into a living crucible where love's fiercest collisions transform into the raw materials of redemption. Critics leaned forward as the opening scene flickered. Tessa Young perched on a cafe stool, gratitude and fear etched across her face. From that moment, reviewers knew they were in for an odyssey that would probe the depths of passion, the weight of guilt, and the resilient spark of hope. The cafe scene set the film's emotional bar. Rain-streaked windows, amber light pooling on dark wood, and dialogue that crackled with chemistry and unspoken tension. Critics praised director Roger Kumble's choice to linger on Tessa's trembling fingers as she first dialed Hardin's number, the camera encircling her in a slow, intimate orbit. In the trade journals, analysts pointed to that shot as a masterstroke of mise-en-scene, the grief and longing conveyed not in exposition but in pure visual poetry. The cafe became both sanctuary and storm front, where forgiveness percolated through the steam and where the past specters hovered at every table. When Hardin emerged behind the counter, his arrival felt seismic. Hero Fiennes Tiffin's performance, a cauldron of brooding anger and desperate vulnerability, drew immediate praise. Critics noted how his dark wardrobe and stubbled jaw, illuminated by flickering neon, echoed the chiaroscuro of his psyche. In early reviews, commentators lauded the way the camera captured his gaze. One moment defiant, the next raw with apology. That duality became a lodestar for the film's thematic core, suggesting that love's greatest test lies in facing the shadows we carry within. Their first reunion, she walking into his loft, rainwater dripping from her coat, ignited debate among commentators. Was her acceptance of his apology too swift, or was it the film's insistence that true love demands bold leaps of faith? In a roundtable for Variety, panelists argued that Tessa's return balanced narrative risk and emotional payoff, giving agency to her character's growth rather than relegating her to a passive recipient of his redemption. They pointed to the tight close-ups on her face as she read his journal, each word a brick removed from the wall between them, underscoring the film's message. Confession alone is hollow without the courage to listen. The journal sequence itself became a touchstone for critical analysis. Hardin's charcoal sketches, intercut with Tessa's incredulous reaction, whispered of art as confession and of creativity as therapy. Film scholars compared the sequence to classic tear-jerker montages in melodrama, noting how silver screen retrospectives would cite its restraint, avoiding overwrought music in favor of diegetic piano refrains, as a lesson in emotional subtlety. By letting the visuals and raw emotional dialogue carry the weight, the film eschewed sentimentality while still delivering a gut punch of empathy. Their subsequent rooftop scene, shot at dusk on a Seattle high-rise, earned accolades for its cinematography and sound design. Cinematographer Brian Bolt harnessed the dying light to silhouette the couple against a pastel sky, the wind tugging at their hair as though urging them together. Sound designer Jason Ruder layered ambient city hum with a distant drone of fairy horns, creating a sonic cocoon that isolated the characters from the world below. Critics hailed this moment as the film's thematic fulcrum, where private confession met public declaration, and where the film's visual lyricism elevated the genre's typical make-up kiss into a profound act of mutual surrender. Yet the film did not shy from its throes of conflict. When Hardin's ex-fiancée returned to the narrative fold, Rebecca's entrance in a candlelit art gallery, it sparked debate over the film's handling of jealousy as a narrative device. Some reviewers argued the subplot teetered on cliché, while others praised its emotional authenticity. Rebecca's cold grace forcing Tessa to confront her own insecurities, and Hardin's flawed loyalty tested in real time. In The Hollywood Reporter, one critic dissected the scene's tight editing, the snap zoom on Tessa's widened eyes, the wraparound cut to Hardin's tense jaw, as evidence of the film's skill in crafting tension from relational fault lines. The mid-film hospital sequence, where Hardin's nightmares erupt into flashbacks intercut with Tessa's fear, became a case study in blending psychological horror with romantic drama. Director Kumble deployed jump cuts and flickering CCTV-style overlays to evoke Hardin's fractured mind, while the film's editors, Virginia Katz among them, stitched these images with Tessa's frantic steps through sterile corridors. Critics singled out that juxtaposition as the film's boldest gambit, to plunge audiences into the terror of mental illness without sacrificing the narrative's emotional through line. In academic circles, the scene inspired papers on genre hybridity, exploring how romance cinema can absorb elements of thriller to depict trauma's inner tumult. When Tessa confronted Hardin in the rain-soaked park, where their fistfight of words and tears played out under the glare of lampposts, reviews praised the raw authenticity. Cinematography shifted to handheld cameras, courting imperfection to mirror the character's emotional disarray. That handheld immediacy, critics noted, drew viewers into the fray, making them complicit in each lash of accusation and each whispered plea. The sequence's sound mix, heavy boots crunching on wet leaves, distant traffic a muted roar, grounded the scene in gritty reality, a departure from the gloss of typical romantic set pieces. Equally noteworthy was the rooftop confession where Tessa offered her own backstory, her mother's absence, her sacrifices for her family's hopes, and Hardin listened in stunned silence. Critics highlighted how this reversal of roles shattered the trope of the wounded male and selfless female, positioning Tessa's vulnerabilities as no less central to their bond. The film's screenwriters received accolades for crafting dialogue that felt lived in. Lines like, "I've been running from shadows my whole life," resonated beyond the page, prompting think pieces on the era's evolving depiction of female agency in romance narratives. Their climactic duet, The Midnight Picnic on a Deserted Beach, drew particular attention for its fusion of visual lyricism and narrative resolution. Shot under practical moonlight and reflected in a shallow tide pool, the scene unfolded in long takes, the camera circling them as they traded voice recordings into an old tape recorder. Critics called it the film's moment of genre alchemy, where the traditions of classic Hollywood romance met the verite immediacy of modern indie cinema. The layered soundscape, crackling tape hiss, the call of distant gulls, underscored the scene's authenticity, while the natural starlight lent it a near-spiritual glow. Box office analysts took note of how these key events translated into audience fervor. The film opened to a robust $15 million domestic weekend, fueled by fervent social media campaigns and midnight screenings in major cities. Hollywood pundits credited its success to the way it embraced genre conventions, love confessions, reunions, stormy reunions, while simultaneously subverting them through raw psychological insight and female empowerment. Streaming platforms reported a spike in viewership during the spring's lock-in season, with viewers praising the film's capacity to blend escapist romance with emotional depth. Yet the film's impact extended beyond numbers. Fans organized "Collide with Us" watch parties in living rooms, couch cushions serving as makeshift sets for reenactments. Tattoo parlors reported requests for tiny, "Always Fight for Me" scripts inked on wrists. On TikTok, Users dissected their favorite rooftop lines, overlaying them with storm footage. Film schools added the movie to their syllabi under Contemporary Romance Reinvented, citing its deft marriage of theatrical spectacle and intimate honesty. In the months after release, critics reflected on its thematic reach. At its heart, the story is a study of collision, not only of hearts, but of past and present, of fear and desire, of self-preservation and vulnerability. Each major event, Tessa's return to Hardin's loft, the subway-echoed nightmares, the park confrontation, became a prism through which audiences could see their own entangled hopes and anxieties. Where earlier installments of the franchise had reveled in youthful longing, this film dared to chart the perilous terrain of love's aftermath, insisting that true intimacy demands the courage to collide with our darkest selves and emerge together into daylight. As credits rolled, applause thundered like the final crash of waves on that midnight beach. Critics rose in unison, applauding not only the actor's commitment but the filmmaker's daring. In any romance, few things prove more resonant than the willingness to bear witness to flaws, failures, and the formidable task of loving another despite them all. This sequel stood as a testament to that truth, its pivotal events and critical acclaim woven into a cinematic tapestry that refuses easy answers, inviting viewers instead to embrace love's greatest challenge, the collision that remakes us. They arrived in downtown Atlanta just as the city stirred awake, film trucks rumbling through the mist-draped streets like mechanical whales breaching a gray sea. Production designer Mara Giovanetti stepped out of her SUV to survey the converted warehouse district that would become the heart of Seattle's drama. Shipping containers painted in shades of smoky teal and slate gray were stacked into makeshift office facades, their corrugated steel catching the dawn light in wicked angles. Production designer Mara Giovanetti stepped out of her SUV to survey the converted warehouse district that would become the heart of Seattle's drama. Shipping containers painted in shades of smoky teal and slate gray were stacked into makeshift office facades, their corrugated steel catching the dawn light in wicked angles. Beneath the hum of generators, she directed her crew to drape eucalyptus branches along metal beams, transforming an industrial lot into the interior of Vance Publishing's sleek lobby. By lunchtime, the space felt less like Georgia and more like a rain-soaked city far to the north, proof that with enough set dressing, a story can unfold anywhere. On that first day of principal photography, the Atlanta sky honored the film's title with a deluge so perfect it could have been scripted. Director Roger Kumble, under a clear plastic umbrella, orchestrated the opening cafe scene as water sluiced down the cafe facade. He'd rehearsed with Josephine Langford and hero Fiennes Tiffin on a rain simulator truck, but nothing matched the real thing. Cars hissing through puddles, passers-by dashing for cover, and the steady hiss of raindrops on actor umbrellas. When Langford's character, soaked to the bone, delivered her first line, voice quavering with resolve, Kumble called, "Print," and knew he'd captured a moment of pure emotional truth. That unscheduled downpour threaded itself through every take, providing an authenticity no artificial rain could match. Inside the studio, the sound department faced its own storm. The cafe set sat under a vast soundstage ceiling, whose ventilation system roared like thunder whenever the climate control kicked in. On a critical close-up take, every whisper between the leads was drowned by the HVAC's rumble. Foley artist Marcus Nguyen rigged blankets around the vents and recorded alternative takes in an isolation booth, his headphones reflecting each creak and footstep with uncanny clarity. Post-production editor Virginia Katz later credited Nguyen's ingenuity with preserving the intimacy of those lines, every tremor in Langford's voice preserved, every breath of Fiennes Tiffin's regret intact. Costume designer Erin Bannock navigated her own tempest. Tessa Young's signature cardigans, soft mohair knits in blush and dove gray, arrived from a knitted-wear atelier in Montreal, but all came mislabeled. As lanes of cars backed up on the interstate shipping routes, Bannock mobilized a local knitting coupe in Decatur. Under fluorescent lights and to the rhythm of Southern gospel hymns played on a battered turntable, the co-op volunteers resorted, relabeled, and rewrapped each sweater by hand. That night, in the soundstage parking lot, trucks rolled in with the corrected shipment, and Langford stepped into her first on-screen wardrobe wearing a sweater both snug and seasonally perfect. Stunt coordinator Angela Rivers engineered the film's most daring sequence, the midnight subway confession. An abandoned MARTA train car, sealed for decades, stood in a backlit, its doors chained shut and windows boarded. Rivers and her team restored its lights and power lines, rigged harnesses for the actors, and choreographed a slow-motion spill of water from a makeshift burst pipe. In the first take, the pipe fractured sooner than planned, hurling a spray of water and shards of plaster into the actor's path. Rather than abort, Rivers called for a low-angle shot of the cascade, capturing Fiennes Tiffin's storm-lit fury as he reached for Langford through the spray. That unplanned moment of chaos became the film's pivotal crescendo of emotional release. Crew camaraderie flourished in the chaos. During breaks, gaffers and grips gathered for impromptu guitar and drum jams, their makeshift stage set between craft services and the hair trailer. Langford, ever curious, picked up a tambourine and joined in, laughter echoing through the lot. In exchange, Fiennes Tiffin shared his passion for photography, loaning his Polaroid camera to the camera assistants. They chronicled every moment, suturing behind-the-scenes joy into the film's off-camera lore, images of rain-spattered clapperboards and moody teal backdrops that would later fill social media feeds and Blu-ray extras. The second unit shoot introduced yet another twist. While Kumble filmed Tessa's driving scenes on Atlanta's outskirts, another team captured aerial shots of Georgia's rolling farmland, intended to stand in for the opening flight journey to Seattle. A drone operator, navigating gusty winds, nearly lost his rig behind a barn, the drone's crash landing rocking the set with a hollow thud. Unbowed, they repurposed the accidental low shot to introduce Tessa's disoriented POV as she disembarked in an unfamiliar city. That jittery angle, born of malfunction, lent the story an unexpected edge. The world tilted beneath her feet before Hardin's tumultuous arrival tilted her heart. Makeup and hair artist Camila Ortega faced challenges when Langford's extended takes left her hair flat and her skin ashen under relentless lights. She improvised midday rescue kits, packs of instant volumizer spray and tinted moisturizer squeezed into travel containers. In cramped trailers between scenes, she and her assistant Françoise blended quick-fix formulas, their hands moving like surgeons to restore Langford's luminous glow. Fiennes Tiffin, watching the ballet of brushes and sprays, quipped that he'd never before felt so grateful for a spritz of sea salt spray, though he admitted that his character might have preferred a layer of smudged eyeliner to match Hardin's haunted gaze. The production's scheduling often strained under the weight of its ambition. Two major set pieces, Tessa's arrival at the editorial offices and Hardin's rooftop confession, were slated for the same weekend. To double back and forth, the team built two identical office interiors on soundstages 4 and 7, mirror images labeled Atlas A and Atlas B. Langford and Fiennes Tiffin navigated the mirrored corridors like actors in a funhouse maze, often joking when they found themselves dancing the same blocking steps in different halves of the lot. Meanwhile, production manager Selena Park conducted an intricate ballet of call sheets, drifting between radio chatter and spreadsheet cells, ensuring no banana peel schedule slip-up would delay the next heart-wrenching reveal. Visual effects supervisor Priya Nair introduced a final fun fact that would become iconic among fans. For the scene where Hardin's nightmare spills across the monitor walls of a control room, she and her team devised a method of layering in glitch artifacts captured from an actual malfunctioning 1990s broadcast deck. They sourced an old videotape deck on eBay, sent by a collector in Minneapolis, whose buyer's remorse led him to hurl the deck off his roof, capturing real crackle, static bursts, and distorted color bars in the process. Nair spliced that footage into the film's terror montage, giving it a retro-haunted shimmer that critics later praised as a perfect symphony of psychotropic dread. Minneapolis, whose buyer's remorse led him to hurl the deck off his roof, capturing real crackle, static bursts, and distorted color bars in the process. Nair spliced that footage into the film's terror montage, giving it a retro-haunted shimmer that critics later praised as a perfect symphony of psychotropic dread. Moments before wrap, the cast and crew gathered for a final rooftop dinner. Pizza, pasta, and icy lemonade served under a string of Edison bulbs. Director Kumble lauded the team's resilience in the face of rain, rogue geese that had invaded the park shoot, and that ill-timed HVAC serenade in the cafe. He lifted his paper cup in a toast. To every unexpected obstacle that forced us to be better storytellers, may our next storms be just as productive. The applause that followed rang from the surrounding buildings, echoing like a promise. When the film premiered in Los Angeles, the audience's reaction mirrored the set's own synthesis of planned and unplanned magic. They laughed at the caffeine spill gag that had been improvised mid-scene, gasped at the rooftop confession lit by real moonlight, and cheered as Tessa and Hardin finally found their fragile peace. In Q&A panels, Kumble shared the legend of the rogue drop of plaster that saved the subway scene, the sweater rescue that kept Tessa's look on point, and the Polaroid photos that remain the cast's most treasured souvenirs. In the months after release, production insiders continue to trade these tales like sailors swapping sea snake stories. Online, aficionados debate which sunrise drone angle was the Atlanta farm shot, and DIY fans rebuild the ventilation blanket trick in their own home studios. Film schools dissect the Atlanta wardrobe coupe rescue as a case study in rapid logistical problem-solving, while sound design forums honor that HVAC-defeating acoustic blanket hack as a blueprint for intimacy in location audio. Through every drizzle of rain, every snapped sweater label, and every glitch-touched nightmare frame, the making of this story proved that cinema's true enchantment lives in its unplanned moments, those flashes of ingenuity and serendipity where the real world seeps into fiction, lending it an authenticity that no script alone can guarantee. And as fans continue to discover these behind-the-scenes secrets, they celebrate not only the characters' collision and reconciliation but the production's own miracle of collaboration. Two hearts and hundreds of hands beating together against the odds to birth a story that lives in our shadows and our hopes alike. They arrived before dawn on the mist-wrapped streets of Seattle, the sky a slow wash of gunmetal gray that promised rain. In the hush of early morning, the city's pulse lay hidden beneath the rumble of trolley tracks and distant ferry horns. It was here, between the steel cables of the still-darkened bridge and the neon afterglow of closed-corner cafes, that a story of love's collision would unfold, and the film's settings would breathe with all the weight of memory and desire. She first enters the world through Tessa Young's eyes, stepping into a small coffee shop nestled on a side street. The shop's exposed brick walls are hung with local art, each canvas saturated in the muted teal and rust tones of cityscapes at dusk. Through wide, rain-streaked windows, the drizzling street frames patrons hunched over steaming mugs. The baristas, their movements choreographed beneath strands of Edison bulbs, form a soft, golden web of light against the gray. Cinematographer Brian Bolt chose a shallow depth of field for these close-ups, letting the blurred cityscape swirl behind Josephine Langford's Tessa as she gathers courage. Every droplet on the glass becomes a prism of resolve, and the shop's warm glow feels like a fragile refuge from her racing heart. Moments later, we cross into the editorial offices of Vance Publishing, a set built inside an Atlanta soundstage, yet rendered with cinematic verisimilitude. Towering windows line one wall, their frames backlit by high-intensity lanterns that simulate Seattle's perpetually overcast sky. The desks, arranged in neat rows of cherrywood, catch the soft tungsten glow of desk lamps, while sleek metal cabinets hum with the promise of deadlines. Here, muted grays and polished chrome merge with the vibrant hues of scattered post-it notes and manuscript pages. In a sweeping Steadicam shot, the camera threads through the labyrinth of cubicles, passing co-workers brisk with morning routine, until it settles on Hardin Scott, hero Fiennes Tiffin, who leans against a glass partition etched with the company's monogram. His reflection fractures in the glass, symbolic of the secrets he keeps, and the cool palette of the office underscores the distance he maintains from others' warmth. Beyond those windows, drone footage captures the city in sweeping aerials, the arcing silhouette of the Space Needle, the mottled rooftops of Pioneer Square, the ferries gliding like silver blades across Elliott Bay. These vistas, shot on location by second-unit teams, anchor the story in a living, breathing metropolis. Each skyline shot dissolves into the next with gentle crossfades, the film's editing rhythm echoing the ebb and flow of tide beneath the docks. In early scenes, soft morning light bathes buildings in a pearlescent haze. By afternoon, heavy clouds gather, their low-slung bellies heavy with unspoken tension. The narrative's most intimate moments take place in Tessa's apartment, converted from a historic loft in the Capitol Hill district. There, brick walls bleed into dark hardwood floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows frame a tapestry of rooftops and TV antennas. Costume racks share the room with stacks of manuscripts, while a beaten leather couch anchors a circle of lingering sorrow and hope. Here, natural light streams in at dawn, illuminating lingering dust motes and lending Tessa's space an almost spiritual stillness. In these scenes, the camera opts for long, unbroken takes, wide enough to let Langford move through the breathless quiet, yet close enough to catch each tremor in her expression. A more turbulent chapter unfolds in an abandoned train yard repurposed as a location for Hardin's nocturnal confessions. Under a shuttle of LED panels set to mimic moonlight, the crew assembled rusted tracks, discarded freight cars, and graffiti-smeared walls. Water trucks periodically doused the ground, deepening the darkness with pools that reflected silo lights like fractured glass. When the two characters meet here, camera operator Sofia Ruiz switches to handheld. Frames tilt, edges jitter, and the percussive splashes of their footsteps punctuate every syllable. The jagged framing feels urgent and raw, underscoring the fragility of the truths they exchange under the weight of city night. At the heart of their journey lies the park bench where their love first flares, shot in a public green space doubled by set dressers as the film's Seattle Park. Towering maples arch over winding paths, their leaves shimmering with autumn's first gold. Cine lenses capture lingering sunlight filtering through branches, creating pools of gentle warmth against the chill of grief. In these outdoor scenes, the film's palette shifts to rich earth tones, rusted fence rails, moss-streaked stone, fallen leaves like confessions scattered on the ground. The camera moves slowly, letting us savor every breathless pause on the bench and feel the weight of each exchanged glance. Rain, ever present, becomes a character in its own right. In scenes both public and private, it drums on awnings and sluices down umbrellas, an accompaniment to every tear and tender embrace. The sound design blends actual rain recordings from local weather stations with the hiss of set sprayers, creating a patter that feels at once realistic and poetic. When they finally reunite in the park, the rain intensifies. Umbrellas close, droplets bounce off shoulders, and their raincoats cling to them like a second skin. That elemental baptism washes away the remnants of anger, leaving them both raw and open. Each setting, coffee shop, office, loft, train yard, park bench, serves as a crucible for emotional transformation. The film's color grading, supervised by Emily Carmichael, stitches these worlds together in a tapestry of muted teals and burnt siennas, broken by flashpoints of warmth in lamplight and street lamps. In day-lit interiors, the hues lean toward soft pastels, reflecting moments of hope. After dark, the spectrum inverts. Deep indigos and iron grays dominate, punctuated by neon signs and dashboard lights that trace their way through every moment of tension. Mirrors and reflections appear as visual motifs, underscoring themes of identity and self-confrontation. In Hardin's loft, a tall mirror stands beside his piano, capturing his slumped form in low light as he scribbles confessional lyrics. In the office, Tessa catches her reflection in a glossy magazine cover, questioning whether she belongs to this new world. Cinematographer Bolt deploys these reflection shots sparingly, each one a ripple in the narrative's pond. One blink at her own image, one flash of his haunted gaze, and the story pivots on the axis of self-realization. The film's soundscape threads through each setting like a hidden river. The burble of coffee machines in the shop, the hum of fluorescent fixtures in the office, the distant train whistle in the yard, even the subtle rustle of leaves in the park become textures in the emotional tapestry. Composer Lucas Vidal tied these sounds into his score. When Tessa steps into the cafe, a piano motif weaves through the ambient noise. At Hardin's roof confession, cello undercurrents throb beneath the clamor of traffic. The result is a seamless fusion of sound design and music that elevates every setting from mere backdrop to living, echoing terrain. Lighting choices further carve the film's mood. Candlelit sequences in that abandoned caboose, handheld teasers of hope, cast dancing shadows on weathered wood. Therapeutic sessions in a glass-walled counseling office gleam with sterile white overheads, framing the characters in the raw exposure of their vulnerabilities. Street lamplit alleyways shimmer with damp reflections, the chiaroscuro enhancing each desperate dash or whispered apology. In every frame, the interplay of light and shadow mirrors the characters' internal contours. Where once they hid their scars, they now stand revealed. The editing knits these diverse locations into an emotional arc that swells and recedes like the bay at twilight. Montage intercuts, Tessa navigating rainbow-hued city blocks, Hardin sketching lyrics in his loft, both colliding in shared flashbacks, create a pulse that drives the narrative forward. Editor Virginia Katz layers fleeting images, a rainy cafe window, a spinning office chair, a subway car door sliding shut. Each cut resonates with thematic weight, reminding us that every setting is both stage and mirror for their transforming love. In its final act, they return to that rooftop, city lights flickering like distant promises, where the story first caught fire. Here, under strung lanterns that glow like suspended hope, the camera pulls back to reveal them framed against an expanse of sky. The storm has passed, broken furniture and potted plants soggy with rain bear witness to battles fought. Yet as dawn breaks, the light softens to rose and honey, painting the city in a new palette. Tessa and Hardin, silhouettes against this rising sun, clasp hands in a vow beyond words. The setting, once a crucible of betrayal, now stands as a testament to love's renewal. Throughout, these locations and cinematic choices meld into a single living epic of raw emotion and atmospheric power. The film's settings do more than host action. They breathe with memory, shape the characters' choices, and invite the audience to feel every drop of rain, every gust of wind, every flicker of neon. In the weave of brick and steel, glass and water, this story finds its pulse, not in grand spectacles, but in the subtle symphony of light, sound, and space that holds two hearts colliding, forgiving, and forging a new horizon together. They arrived before dawn on the deserted backlit, the sky still ink-dark, the promise of another Georgia spring day hanging in the air. Trucks rattled past as grips wheeled in cables and set pieces, their headlights slicing through the mist. Production manager Selena Park stepped out of her golf cart, clipboard in hand, and surveyed the small army of technicians dressed in hoodies, coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. It was the first day of the Office Interiors shoot for After We Collided, or what the locals knew as Seattle, in Atlanta. Winds rustled through the eucalyptus branches that art department had draped along the steel girders, and craft services trailers exhaled the scent of fresh biscuits and hot tea. The crew knew that the next 2 weeks would test every ounce of their ingenuity, camaraderie, and ability to tell a touching love story set 1,000 miles from the Pacific Northwest. Inside the cavernous soundstage, production designer Mara Giovanetti paced between towering glass partitions and rows of sleek cubicles. She'd flown in Seattle window panes, plexiglass frames cut to exact specifications, but the moment she saw them swathed in Atlanta's early light, glowing like a mirage, she knew the gamble had paid off. By midday, the Vance Publishing sign stood erected above a reception desk fashioned from reclaimed wood, and Mara watched as extras, clad in muted grays and blues, drifted through the space like cogs in a corporate machine. When Josephine Langford and hero Fiennes Tiffin arrived to shoot their first office scene, they stepped into a world that felt uncannily real, crisp, oppressive, yet vibrantly alive with the hum of ambition. That morning's biggest challenge came from a surprise power surge that sent the fluorescent overheads flickering. One moment, the office gleamed with clinical brightness. The next, the lights buzzed erratically, casting strobe-like shadows across the floor. Cinematographer Brian Bolt, unshaken, shouted for gaffers to switch to tungsten floods rigged around the perimeter, while sound mixer Olivia Jenkins hustled in to shield boom mics from electrical crackle. It took only minutes for the crew to pivot, plugging in dimmer switches and duct-taping extension cords. By the time Langford delivered her first line, quiet, determined, the office glowed again, the brief blackout lending an unexpected intimacy to her whispered confession. Kumble nodded from behind the monitor, grinning, "We'll keep that flicker in, folks. It's perfect." Between takes, the cast and crew forged bonds that would carry them through the trials ahead. In the break area, stunt coordinator Angela Rivers and her team set up a makeshift guitar and amp, coaxing sprightly riffs from onlookers. Langford, who'd never played beyond the occasional campfire strum, plucked at the strings under Rivers' patient tutelage. Fiennes Tiffin, an insomniac by nature, joined in with quiet percussion, knuckles tapping a rice cooker lid. The spontaneous jam sessions echoed down the cavernous halls, drawing hearty laughter from grips piling sandbags and construction electricians sorting circuits. These impromptu concerts became the heartbeat of the shoot, a reminder that even the most technical days could yield moments of pure joy. When the forecast promised rain, inevitable Atlanta April drizzle, Second Unit Director Sam Becker arranged for the rain machine to be tested late at night. The lot fell silent as massive pipes pumped water overhead, each droplet striking the pavement with a hiss that sounded like silver claps. Hardin's first confession scene was scheduled under this artificial storm, but as dawn broke, the heavens opened in sympathy, a tidal downpour that soaked the set in seconds. Producers called for a hold, but Kumble insisted on rolling. "We can't beat this," he crowed. When Langford emerged, drenched and shivering, she leaned into the rain for every desperate word. In that unplanned deluge, their performance gained an elemental power that would echo on screen as a baptism of truth. Inside the hair and makeup trailer, Lisa Hernandez conducted her own storm preparations. Langford's hair required a delicate balance of texture and movement, soft waves that caught raindrops like pearls, while maintaining continuity between rain-soaked takes and indoor close-ups. Lisa and her assistant mixed sea salt sprays and lightweight gels into storm kits, tiny pouches they slipped into Langford's pockets to refresh between wide shots. Fiennes Tiffin relied on a signature tousle, just enough to evoke brooding complexity, and Lisa's quick touch-ups ensured that each strand fell precisely where cinematic fate required. Their cramped trailer echoed with laughter and gossip, as Hernandez recounted stories of old Hollywood legends trapped by on-set hurricanes, a legacy of weather-turned-creative catalyst. Beyond the lot, location shoots demanded equal ingenuity. The production secured an abandoned rail yard 15 miles north, transforming rusted tracks and mossy freight cars into the midnight confession set. Grip Chief Anders Dredge Olson built a raised platform of wooden planks to retrace the cabin's trembling floorboards. They poured thousands of gallons of water along the tracks, creating tidal swirls that reflected the overhead lights in fractured patterns. During one take, the water pump's hose snapped, sending a wave through the set and soaking the crew's ankles. Rather than abort, Rivers called "action" and captured the actors' startled stumbles, weaving that surprise into the final montage. Later, Dredge would joke about dodging floods on the Titanic set, but the cast and crew murmured that this watery trial might have topped that legend. The off-duty hours yielded equally memorable moments. In a nearby taco truck parked outside Pinewood Studios gates, Langford hosted an impromptu trivia night. She'd memorized facts about the novel's author and peppered the crew with questions. What's Hardin's original middle name? Name the song his father used to sing. Winners received miniature, After We Collided, keychains and the proud title of Collide King or Queen. Laughter rose with each correct answer, forging a sense of shared ownership. This wasn't just another studio shoot, but the making of a story they all lived. Wardrobe department stories became the stuff of legend. Benak had ordered dozens of pastel cardigans from a boutique in Buckhead, only to have them seized in customs for mislabeled packaging. Facing a wardrobe crisis, she scoured local thrift stores at dawn, recruiting a team of seamstresses from a 24-hour alterations shop. Under the hum of fluorescent sewing machines, they retagged, rehemmed, and rebranded every knit sweater by 6 a.m. the next day. Benak arrived with coffees for the team, declaring that fashion can't wait on bureaucracy. Langford slipped into her first on-screen cardigan that morning, unaware of the all-night labor stitched into each seam. One Sunday, in the lull between office interiors and rooftop scenes, the cast and crew decamped to the Botanical Gardens for a Seattle picnic. Drive-in catering trucks transformed pathways into picnic lanes, blankets spread beneath dogwood trees, and local musicians strummed acoustic sets. Langford and Fiennes Tiffin practiced emotional scenes on the grass, using the gentle rustle of leaves as natural ambience. Fans spotted them through chain-link fencing and whispered rumors spread on social media that their on-screen chemistry had bloomed into off-camera friendship. The garden's wisteria vines and winding footbridges later inspired Kumble to tweak the script, adding a tender daydream sequence where Hardin imagines a life beyond pain, a scene that would become one of the film's most unexpectedly poetic interludes. producer Ryan Button navigated the fine line between storytelling ambition and budget reality. A proposed scene featuring an actual Seattle trolley on a rain-soaked street was scrapped when costs soared. Button and location manager Marisol Vega pivoted, securing an early morning lane closure on a quiet Atlanta street. They repainted a local tram to mimic Sound Transit's livery and rigged fog machines behind the vehicle to simulate Pacific mist. The ensuing shot, a single continuous take of Tessa boarding the tram as commuters glance on, earned applause from executives, a triumph of resourceful filmmaking. In post-production, editing guru Virginia Katz held daily emotion sweeps with Kumble and composer Lucas Vidal. They'd screen key scenes and debate the precise placement of music cues, her headphones in one hand, coffee in the other, as they scribbled notes on color-coded post-its plastered around the editing suite. One morning, Vidal played a draft of the theme backwards by accident, revealing a haunting undercurrent that fit Hardin's inner turmoil perfectly. Excited, he built that reversed motif into the string arrangement, and Katz layered it beneath their dialogue in moments of desperation, a subliminal echo that critics later singled out as a masterstroke of psychological scoring. When COVID-19 emerged as a global threat midway through reshoots, the film narrowly predated industry shutdowns. Fiennes Tiffin, ever the early adopter, insisted the team adopt preliminary safety measures, hand sanitizer stations, distancing between craft table stations, nightly temperature checks, out of respect for crew welfare. Though the virus would soon shutter sets worldwide, After We Collide's completion under these emergent protocols became a testament to the solidarity of its cast and crew. In the wrap party video released online, Langford raises a sanitizing spray in toast to safety, teamwork, and stories that survive storms, seen and unseen. On Vindication Day, Principal Photography's final dusk, the entire company gathered atop the same rooftop where Hardin and Tessa first shared a moonlit confession. Edison bulbs twined overhead as craft services laid out pizzas and pastel-frosted cupcakes. Fiennes Tiffin, makeup still streaked from the last tearful scene, addressed the crew. Every drop of rain, every flicker in the lights, every floating cardigan braid of destiny, this was our story to stitch together. Thank you for every unexpected moment you turned into magic. As cameras rolled on the rap video, the crew cheered, their silhouettes framed against a sky now washed in violet twilight. Months later, fans continue to unearth these tales in Blu-ray extras, podcast interviews, and social media deep dives. Each anecdote, the plumbing leak that mocked Hardin's burst, becomes a whispered secret of filmmaking. The Florida raft contraption that captured their subway tunnel shots lives on in gear list lore. And the Atlanta geese that ambled through the park chute are immortalized in an Easter egg, a lone goose quack layered beneath a pivotal line of dialogue, a fitting tribute to the unscripted actors who wandered into their world. These behind-the-scenes insights remind us that every crafted frame holds a universe of human ingenuity, laughter, and serendipity. And in those unsung moments, when plans went awry and solutions were forged on the fly, the true spirit of cinema revealed itself, a collision of hearts and minds, working in tandem to bring a story of love storms and sunrises to life. They arrived on that rooftop before dawn, the sky still a bruise of indigo, and found themselves wrapped in the song of city streets winding awake below. In the hush between heartbeats, the world felt infinite, just as love, laid bare, can feel like everything. It was here that the film's greatest theme unfolded, the collision of two souls, each bearing its own scars, meeting at the edge of dawn and learning that the light won't come unless they choose to face the darkness together. At the heart of their story lies the tension between control and surrender. Hardin Scott's entrances, through rain-slicked streets or across the polished floors of Vance Publishing, carry the weight of a man used to commanding his world, yet trapped by the walls of his own making. His leather jacket, dark and weathered, symbolizes both his armor and his imprisonment. Each crease echoes a bruise from battles past. When he first strides into Tessa's life, his posture is rigid, his gaze shielded by dawn's shadows. Only in moments of raw confession, the floodlit rooftop, the trembling subway car, does he remove that jacket, revealing the tremor of vulnerability beneath. In contrast, Tessa Young arrives as a seeker of control, her notebooks carefully tabbed, her plans for Seattle laid out in neat bullet points. Yet every time she steps into his world, plans unravel, pages soaked by rain, outlines lost in his storm-tossed gaze. Their dance is one of push and pull. She learns that surrender can be its own form of courage, and he discovers that control evicted fear only when shared, never wielded alone. Rain becomes the story's most persistent symbol, a character in its own right, drumming on awnings and sluicing down windows. In the cafe, each drop on glass fractures the outside world into prisms of possibility and regret. In the editorial offices, rain hisses through vents and rattles cubicle walls, reminding them that secrets will leak if not faced. On the abandoned train yard, water floods the tracks, pooling in rusted hollows until the actors' footsteps echo like heartbeats seeking direction. Rain cleanses and reveals. It strips facades, leaving only truth in its wake. And when the lovers finally reunite under a torrential downpour, their clothes soaked through, the world feels reborn. The downpour isn't a mere backdrop but a baptism, a washing away of lies and the dawning of a shared covenant. Mirrors and reflections recur as motifs of self-confrontation. In Hardin's loft, a tall mirror stands beside his weathered piano, capturing his silhouette bowed in confession. When he shreds lyric drafts, poems laced with blame and longing, he sees his own terror reflected back, forcing him to acknowledge the monster his fear has made. In Tessa's apartment, a glossy magazine cover on the coffee table delivers her image back to her, hopeful yet hardened by each betrayal. Only when she steps closer, finger trailing dew from a fallen coffee mug, does she accept the imperfection etched into her reflection, a readiness to rewrite her own story beyond the margins of someone else's guilt. Light and shadow choreograph their inner journeys. Early scenes in the cafe glow with golden tungsten, wrapping Tessa in a promise of warmth. But as conflict mounts, fluorescents flare overhead in the office, cold and clinical, each flicker echoing a moment of fractured trust. Rooftop confessions unfold beneath strings of Edison bulbs, the soft amber a fragile halo that fades at the film's climax, giving way to the pale clarity of dawn's first light. That shift, from manufactured warmth to natural radiance, maps their evolution. Love born in artifice finds its true form only when illuminated by unfiltered truth. The city itself stands as a living metaphor. Seattle's bridges, their cables arching like stretched veins, symbolize the tenuous connections between Tessa and Hardin, and between each character and their past. In aerial shots, those cables trace silver arcs against dusky skies, reminding viewers that love must span chasms of fear. The ferries cutting across Elliott Bay, tracked in long reflective takes, evoke journeys of separation and reunion, their slow passages across water mirroring the protagonist's own trepidatious crossings from isolation to intimacy. Color weaves through every frame as emotional commentary. The film's palette shifts from pastel cardigans and blush tones, Tessa's early vestiges of innocence, to Hardin's brooding grays and stormy blues, each hue reflecting mood and motive. As they draw together, their wardrobes begin to overlap. A charcoal scarf drapes over her shoulders, a lavender tie peeks from his jacket, signaling their tentative blending. The final rooftop scene bathes them in rose-gold light, pink and amber fused, heralding the alchemy of two hearts learning to shine in concert. Sound binds these strands into a living tapestry. Composer Lucas Vidal laces piano arpeggios with cello undertones, his motifs recurring like echoing footfalls in deserted subway tunnels. In moments of tension, Hardin's bursts of anger, Tessa's quivering confrontation, the score retreats to whispered synth hums, leaving room for ambient elements. Rain's rhythmic patter, distant fairy horns, the susurrus of wind through treetops.